Let's recall we're in God's presence once again. Tonight what I want to do is another titration and show you a different technique. This would be a lab that you would have been doing. It's somewhat similar to the one I did in our last video, but there's some newer equipment that I'm going to introduce you to. I want to start off by showing you the results of the titration we did the other night. The other flasks are still here, and I put them against a white background. They still have a little faint pink color to them. This one was the one where we did the standardization of the KHP, and this one was the one we did with the titration of the base and acid. When you have color that lasts like that, it's going to be evidence that you got a good neutralization. So just something to flash back to what we did the other day. Now behind me is a lot of the equipment that we're going to work with. Today I'm going to show you the various pieces of it, how it fits together, and then we're going to run the titration, but this time we're going to try to record the data on the vernier LabQuest. So let me get my safety glasses on here, and I'm going to start to show you what I have in terms of equipment. First of all, I'm using the base and acid solutions that we had the other night when I taped this for you. I got sodium hydroxide 1/10 molar. I have 1/10 molar hydrochloric acid. And when we did the calculations the other day, we found out that they were pretty close to the numbers that are on the storage bottle. But when we standardize, we always get much more accurate values. I have a waste bottle here, a waste beaker, in the event that I need that. And then on my benchtop here, I have some phenolphthalein. I have 60 milliliters of distilled water. I have a beaker. Here's our LabQuest. And over here is a little device that is a stirrer. And you've seen these before. I'm going to turn it on. It has a light, series of lights in it. So when I turn it on, you can see lights in the background there. I'm actually going to turn it so it doesn't obscure your view so much. There we go. If I put a magnetic bar on the top of it and then turn it on, and there's a little rheostat on the back here that can change the speed. If I turn that on, I can see that the magnet bar can spin around. And you've seen equipment like that and perhaps have used it already. Now let me turn that off. I'm going to use a different kind of a stirring mechanism. And this one is going to be a little device that's on the tip of a pH probe. And in the piece of equipment I have here, I have a pH probe. This is a device, electric device, that records changes in pH. And down towards the tip of it, let's see if I'll be able to put some light on this. There's a little device that fastens to the end of the pH probe. The pH probe is right at the bottom here. And when I turn the stirrer on, there's a little paddle in here that flips around. So I'm not using a stirring bar, but I have a little magnetic device in there that will rotate and then stir our liquid. So let me turn that off for the time being. So with our distilled water and our beaker, let's get set. Up on the top here, I have a burette that's filled with sodium hydroxide solution, and the device that you see right here is going to be able to keep track of how much volume goes into the process of the titration. It's not going to be me that's measuring the volume and turning on the valve. It's actually going to be a little light emitting diode down in here, and as each drop falls through this thing called a drop counter, it's going to interrupt the beam of light, and then that'll count the drop. And in the meantime, it will plot for us what the drops happen to be doing when we get the volume of the liquid that goes in. So let me start off by taking my beaker. I'm going to put 60 milliliters of distilled water into it. And I'm going to add just a couple of drops of phenolphthalein. And the phenolphthalein will be just an indicator to us, but the real device, the pH probe, is what's going to be reading the data for us. So we'll have this, but if there happens to be a change in pH, we may see that with a change in the color of the indicator. Now let me put that down on the bottom here, put the stirrer underneath, and we'll center that. And let me turn on the stirrer here for just a moment just to check and see if it's rotating okay. And there it goes. You might even be able to hear the clicking noise that it's making. Now, my pH probe is a little glass tube down in the solution, and when I enter values for this, the pH probe is going to be reading how the acid and base conditions change in the beaker. Now, let me again turn this off. Over in the back side here, I have a burette, and it has hydrochloric acid in it, the one I showed you before. And I'm not going to be adding it from the clamp here. I'm actually going to physically add it to my beaker just by draining the hydrochloric acid in, just by holding the beaker. And I'm going to add 5 milliliters of acid. I've opened the valve, and here's our 5 milliliters mark. So we have added 5 milliliters of acid to the beaker of water, the distilled water. I'll put the acid aside, and then I'm going to make sure that the burette here is lined up with the little opening where drops are counted. Now, let me turn on the stirrer once again. And I know that I put acid in there because what's happening right now is that the LabQuest is reading the pH for me. And I'm going to hopefully bring this up a little closer to the screen for you without trying to dislodge anything else. See if we can get it up here for you. And right over in this corner here, there's, whoops, gotta go back. Okay. So up in the corner here, there's a reading of my pH value, and it's reading 2.42. When I started this just a few minutes ago and had no acid in there, the pH was 7, which would be typical of what water would be, distilled water. It's pure. So when I get the process going here, I'll occasionally bring the LabQuest up to you so you can see it a little bit better. Not sure if we can prop that there. No, I'll probably have to lift it for you. Okay, so let me put this down, and let's begin to add the base solution to our beaker. So I'll slide this over a little bit. I'm going to have to stop my taping here for just a second. Okay, I just had to align the drop position to the beaker, and our stirring mechanism is still working. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start the read of pH on the LabQuest. So I'm down here on the LabQuest. I'm going to press the little green arrow to get the process started.